Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my blog, where it's both my mission and my pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you specific takeaways, all so that way your journey is just a little bit easier, maybe a little bit more. And before I fully get into things, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, this past week, we had kind of taken off 2 weeks in terms of rehearsals, just because one of our actors was filming another movie. Also, it allowed us to finalize script changes and focus on kind of costuming and various things of that nature. So last week was the second time that everyone got together for a rehearsal and so forth. And so, as I kind of looked at that, there was an opportunity to really, just recalibrate everything. And, because we're like, we're like 2.5 months out from filming this. And I was like, and then I had to pause, like, no, we're really like 2 months and a week from doing this thing. And so we're actually, approaching the business end of things very rapidly. And so, just kind of that sort of alignment, and just getting in that right headspace of, like this is becoming real, and we got to meet certain deadlines and just, get things done. And as I was kind of thinking about it, I was like, okay, if I'm asking people to sort of reorient themselves and kind of, just refocus back to the North Star of things, I was like, I should probably do that for myself. So, it was always my intention to do a check-in therapy right before filming. But I was like, I should do one before this as well, before the cast meeting, before the rehearsal. And for those unfamiliar, basically, the therapy I do is kinesiology. So it's not like regular weekly talk therapy. This is based off of body movement. So, if you have a negative association with something, your arm goes down. If you have a positive association, your arm is able to stay up. Yes is also yes, your arm stays up. No, your arm goes down, type of thing. And so you're essentially like digging through various triggers and so forth. And you usually start with, okay, how many things you charges up, right? So that's kind of the phrase, like how many charges do you have? And, it could be 1, 2, 3, it could be none, right? So it could go from 0 all the way to infinity, really. But you start with those, and, you kind of get to the meat of, okay, what are those charges? What's causing those charges? And then you essentially rid yourself of those charges. And the way, it kind of works is the idea by bringing to the forefront, you are able to create new neural patterns and, disassociate that old negative thinking with one that you choose to, and so forth, right? So we sort of did that. That's where we started. And then what was interesting, a lot of it focused on this idea of the master and the ego. That's kind of what the charges initially that came up, they revealed themselves as. This idea that I just want to, and this is like the crazy part, like we create so many limiting beliefs that once said out loud, they're just preposterous. And yet this is like our operating system, or at least in, what I'm about to explain was for me. So this idea that, I didn't ever want to become a master. I wanted to remain an amateur. And the reason for that is because the so-called people that I've seen, flaunt themselves as masters. Really, it was ego-driven and so forth, and yada, 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 and I didn't want to become them. And so, therefore, I limited myself because I didn't want to be one of them, right? That's kind of the crux of it. And it's like, what? No, the true master, like, no one ever really becomes a master. The masters we look at throughout history, they continually see this as a process of improving and improving and improving, and have the humility throughout to know that they have not ascertained this so-called thing of becoming a master. No different than, like, there's a book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. It's not the way to the peaceful warrior, because you never become a peaceful warrior. It's the way of the peaceful warrior. It's only through those actions that you are the peaceful warrior, right? And no different than a master. Like the way you exemplify, being top tier in any sense is through the act of doing those things, and so forth, right? So that's kind of the core idea, but this was a major block for me, and so forth. And that's why, this idea, I often, whenever I speak with friends or I do interviews on other podcasts or whatever it may be, they ask me, what does that mean for you? What is 360 Creative Coach? And it's an introductory question, right, to get to the root of it. But my basic premise is that, talent and skill is not enough to succeed in any form of life, really, because there's such a mental component. If you don't master mental fortitude, you're done for. Any little roadblock that comes up can destroy you. And so, like I said, our operating systems, it's just so interesting, all the stuff we collect and we believe. And that's why, I knew I needed to reset myself. And that's why I believe in therapy and go to therapy and so forth. And I knew I needed to do it for myself before I could even ask the other people. I can't ask anyone else to do the same thing if I'm not willing to do it myself, right? And, initially, why it wasn't necessarily on my radar until, just before going to film my second movie was because, I was worried, I was kind of trying to really limit my spending so that way all the spending, any leftover stuff could go towards the movie. But I was like, you know what, it's just, it's an investment, and that is an investment towards the movie. Me being aligned properly throughout this process, it's astronomical in terms of reward versus cost, right? The cost is relatively low versus the tenfold or whatever benefit of going to therapy in this case. Right? So I always kind of look at things that way, and I was just like, you know what? Yeah, I gotta go. And I'm so glad that I went, and there's, I've talked about this a while ago, but it always remains in my mind. There's this great movie called Wag the Dog, starring Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, and, just a plethora of other amazing actors, in kind of various roles throughout it. And Dustin Hoffman plays this Hollywood producer who gets tasked to essentially, create a lie for the American people because it's political and it's based off. It's this idea there's an election and so forth, so they're like spin doctors and so forth, right? Just taking something and making sure their guy gets reelected, right? So there's that side of it, but ironically, all that aside, one of the reasons, and by the way, that's great, a study in and of itself, but one of the reasons I really like the movie is because Dustin Hoffman just exemplifies this producer, this Hollywood producer, who just always has this can-do spirit. His phrase is this is nothing. And, really, as we, go towards production, and then definitely in production, we're going to need that spirit. And I'm going to need to be that Dustin Hoffman character of this is nothing. Whatever comes our way, we're going to be able to handle it. And so again, in order for me to instill that within the team, I need to exemplify that. And the only way to do that is to be aligned properly mentally, right? To have gone to therapy, to continue doing the work, as they say, right? And I'm so glad I did, because it was a nice reminder of there's going to be things that come up, but this is nothing. And the irony is that there have been things that have been kind of lingering and need to get solved for. And, the timing is always interesting to me, but it didn't have, either way, it was going to get done. And so, all of a sudden, within a day or two, all the things that seemed so arduous, all of a sudden, poof, go away. They resolve themselves, So part of it's having patience, part of it's just, okay, do what you got to do. But then just trust the process, have backups for the things that you can, and, just know certain things are out of your control and you'll just readjust accordingly. So that's kind of that's kind of, in terms of last week, how mentally things progressed. Rehearsal wise, it was great to have this energy, everyone kind of together. I work with the various groups kind of individually, and so it was fun for them to all kind of collectively come together and see that spark of energy, based on the training that we've done prior. And yeah, we got through all the things that we needed to, and when you rehearse, basically it's just me and the actors, so 5 actors, so rehearsing 5 actors, and, we're trying to get through a lot. There's not everything that I'm going to catch, but that's why I record it, so I can play it back and see kind of, even just the nonverbal stuff of reactions based off people, and I can catch that and continue to sculpt the performances as time goes by. In fact, one of the things we're scheduling individual meetings, so that way, we can really talk with everyone, about just production stuff, that pertains to them on an individual level, and B, just provide them with feedback of hey, here's how, we're seeing it, here's how it's coming across, here's the good, here's what's working really well, and here's where we'd like to just adjust a little bit, right? So we continue in that way, and after rehearsals, as I always do, I take all the stuff, I edit it into, this what I'm calling the rehearsal edit. So I did that. And this time, because we filmed pretty much the last parts that we'd been missing, so it kind of gives us a complete movie now. Obviously there's been rehearsals that we did at the beginning that were off of an older version of the script. So not everything's 100% reflective of, the movie, but it gives us a baseline to look at it and see and kind of assess in that way. And so now that we had at least a version kind of from pretty much from start to finish, it's not that we didn't have every scenes, right? There's certain montage scenes that we're not going to rehearse, right? Because we'll just film it on the day. So for that, I placed in just basically fillers. So I took moments from other movies, that I thought were just fun and, maybe not 100% true representations of what was going on in our scene. But for example, there was a conversation scene that takes place in a living room. So I was you know what? Let me take a clip from Meet the Fockers, or Meet the Parents rather, and that famous dinner table. So let me just kind of put that as just a placeholder, right? Just so we can visually see it and so forth. So I did stuff like that to give us an accurate version of what the runtime would be. Also, just music. I went through and I added music cues, and so this was just temporary music, so that way I could send it to, for scoring purposes. People can start to see of okay, how is this playing? What's in his mind in terms of the songs and so forth. And they can kind of get ahead of things there. Also, moving forward, one of the things that I'm going to do is for certain scenes, play that music so that way they can act based, and get in a rhythm based on that music. Because there are certain scenes where the song or a song is diegetic, meaning part of the scene, and they react to it well. And it's not to say the other stuff hasn't worked, it has, right? But I think it's just introducing that sort of element, I think finesses it that much more. And so I'm going to utilize that within my toolkit, right? So that'll be exciting. So yeah, that's kind of where things are at overall, production continuing and so forth. One thing I want to kind of go back to, it's very interesting to me, talking about the mental aspect of it. There's an idea that I think is very powerful, but we don't really consider it, and I certainly hadn't heard it until a couple months ago. But it's if you're born with it, you get to keep it. If not, lose it. And so to really kind of clarify what that means, peace, really, being at peace is our natural state. And anger, jealousy, or whatever, just take us away from our natural state. So that. the ability to love, we don't, as when we're born, we're not really jealous. We don't have stress and all this stuff, right? So, you can take that and look at it in any number of ways, but just look at like traits as like from the day you're born, what you're worried about, what you're thinking about, all this stuff. It's not there. All the stresses of everyday life are not there. Now, of course, yes, as life continues, we have to mature and gain skill and so forth. I'm not saying be ignorant like a child. We have to grow up and become adults. However, in terms of the spirit, yes, pretty much every great thinker or enlightened person, whatever the case may be, that we look up to, talks about this youthful spirit, childlike mentality, and so forth, while still having the work ethic, the wherewithal of responsibility, and so forth of an adult, right? And that's what it really means to, if you were born with it, keep it. If not, lose it, right? So going to me, the idea that if you become a master, then it's fueled by your ego and you become egomaniacal and just whatever else. It's like, I wasn't born with that. I learned that along the way. So lose it, right? And really a lot of therapy, a lot of good therapy, at least in my opinion, is this exploration, and getting to a truth. And most of it's like, is it true or not? And this is another version of that. Like, were you born with this thought, right? Were you born with this thought, regardless of what it is? Were you born with it? Yes or no? And if you were, keep it. If you weren't, lose it. It's not serving you, most likely, right? So that's kind of something to think about that I thought would be worth sharing. The other aspect, this past week, the main thing, and I've said this from the get-go to everyone involved, is the main thing that I'm going to constantly be tinkering with in terms of the script and the film is the ending. Because, the ending, it's the last thing. It has to end on, a satisfying conclusion. And so, that I'm kind of continuing to tinker with that. And, there was something that I tried and, in theory, it was great. But then I got to writing it within the script, and I was like, this just isn't, it's clunky. So, I did kind of alter just a line of dialogue here and there, but we'll see, it's still something that's churning within my brain as things continue. The other aspect in terms of creativity, I like to, take a break from certain things just to clear my mind, so it's, I can think fresh new thoughts. And so as a form of doing that, one of the things I did was just start writing a second novel. I'd written one novel, so I was like, what? Now I have an outline. I have a good idea of, I basically have the entire story, because, pretty much it's based off of something else that I did. So I'm basically repurposing it. So it's all there. It just needs to, and it's not a one-to-one translation of taking something else and then turning it into a novel. But, it gives me enough of a runway where it's not, I'm not at a starting position, right? I'm in a much, not final, but like, let's say 70% of the way there. And so, I took what I had, I outlined, what would the chapters look like in terms of a novel if I were to do that. Okay, that was step one. Then step two was starting to write the various chapters. So I literally wrote out chapter one. And that was just fun, I don't know when I'll complete it. Certainly I have, the movie, the upcoming movie remains my top priority. And so if it takes time away from that, I'm not going to pursue it. But, just writing a chapter and creating an outline for it, like, it was easy enough, so it was just like an hour or two. And so I was like, yeah, why not? Let's just do it, right? So yeah, kind of did that. The other thing, last week my friend Ian Kaiser was in town, and he's also one of the producers on this upcoming movie. He's been a producer on the other movie. It was just fun to see him. I hadn't seen him in a long time because he lives in Chicago, and we did a bunch of escape rooms. In fact, we did 3 escape rooms in total. Like, he's just become an escape room fanatic, and I mean, rightfully so. I too love escape rooms, and the ones we did, they were just so well done in terms of the production value and so forth. We did Quest Room here in LA. We did The Perfumer. We did Red Giant and Bloody Elbow, I think it's what it's called. And it was just so much fun, you know. So I don't know. Thought I'd share that just because it made me smile. And if you like escape rooms and you're in LA, maybe go check it out. Or if you're not in LA, you know, I'm sure there's escape rooms close to you somewhere. Check them out. It'd be fun. It worked for me. But that's kind of the long and short of what I've got going on, or at least had going on in the past week. You know, now we're getting down to the business end of things with the movie, and it's both exciting and, yeah, you know, we're going to conquer it. This is nothing, as Dustin Hoffman's character would say. This is nothing. So 2 months to go. Things are falling into alignment, and very exciting time. So I'll keep you updated as time goes by. Anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.